So what we're going to be doing in this course is kind of following this train of thought that metaphors and myths and narratives are much more than cute little stories or anecdotes or fables, that they really try to communicate an emotional truth, something profound. It alters the way we see the world, and it has a huge impact on how we think. So these stories are much more than stories. You could call them true in a spiritual sense. And so we are going to be looking at metaphors, and then we will look at myths in the next lecture, and then we will look at how we use these to create a narrative for our lives. We actually are active participants in our lives, but we also construct a narrative to help explain the events in our lives. And depending on how we select that narrative, it can have a huge impact on our life and how we live it and how we feel it and the way we move through that narrative. And oftentimes, just changing the narrative of your life can be profoundly transformative. Another thing is life can sometimes feel chaotic, and sitting down and linearizing your life and writing down the events in a timeline gives order and structure to your life. And it no longer feels chaotic, and you begin to see connections, and it may begin to make sense for you. So I wanted to give you a really good example I found for this first class on the power of metaphors. And I'm not making a strong distinction between metaphor, analogies, similes. There's a lot of arguments on the internet about which one's which, and are they the same or are they different? And I'm not really interested in that right now. But we're going to look at just generally, I'm going to use the word metaphor. And the example I found was actually in a Buddhist book. And he showed the power of metaphor. And he did it in a way that we're all familiar with. It's a very simple example, but it's overwhelming and powerful. And it has controlled the way Western people think for a couple hundred years, and yet we're completely unaware of it. So I think this is an excellent example of the power of metaphors. When they're ingrained in your culture, you never question them, and you don't even realize they're a metaphor. And I think this is why we have some trouble when we come to Buddhism, is we're coming to it from a different culture. And these metaphors are unique and unusual, and we're not familiar with them. And so we tend to step back a bit and wonder why we're, talking about things that aren't literally true. But most things in our lives are metaphor. We see the world through metaphor. It's how we organize our thoughts, and it's how we engage with the world. And again, it's effortless, and we're unaware of it. So Dale S. Wright is a Buddhist scholar, and he wrote Metaphor and Theory of Cultural Change. And he said, the most powerful and provocative metaphors develop in a systematic way, spinning off ever more extensive uses of the root metaphor. And so, they have a life of their own. They're like a weed or an ivy, or they grow out and influence many concepts beyond the one that it started with. So the one we're going to look at is this one called time is money. This is something ingrained in Western culture. I didn't know there was any other way to think about it. It's the only way I think about time. So he says, while many of us might react negatively now to the metaphor, time is money, we do in fact conceive of time through its analogies to our financial world. So this is how time is conceived, the same way we conceive of money. We could conceive of time many other ways, but we don't. So he says, all of us think in terms of wasting or saving our time, giving our time, donating our time. We also think of it, and we say this all the time, we always say, how do you spend your time? As if it's a commodity, and it's something that is spent, and that you have a bank account of time. And also investing time. Oftentimes we don't do things for the pure joy of it or lose ourselves in the process. We do things as an investment for a future return. So this really affects the way we think about Buddhism. It's usually, if I do this, what will I get? What value will I get for time spent? If I spend an hour at church, do I get an hour's worth of benefit back? And so it becomes a transactional way of thinking about Buddhism, rather than something that is just done because it changes our week or it changes how we feel. I think we do this a lot with Buddhism, but it's interesting we're not consistent. When I listen to the Beatles, it's just a joy. I lose myself in the music. I don't think this way. So another problem I think in our culture is we're not logically consistent. In some ways, we don't view time as money. And that would be a Buddhist narrative that's competing with the time is money narrative. And so there's two ways to go after Buddhism. You could practice Buddhism to find better ways to spend your time, which is a very secular, New Age self-help approach. Or what you could do is reject that analogy, reject that metaphor, that you will no longer think of time in terms of money. Time you can think of as intensity or duration or experience. That would really change your orientation with a lot of things in your life. You would do things for the joy of it, the meaning of it, and not for the value of time spent.